All right, so welcome again to the session design training today. I'm really excited today that we're welcoming Charlie Haley back with us, our resident expert over the last couple of years in session design and so many more things. I've seen ESIP meeting sessions really be taken up a notch or two or three thanks to her guidance and thanks to the effort that you all have put forth to really try to reach and tap into that potential. I'm really glad that we have a good crowd gathering here. If you haven't yet, please download the slides that are linked in the chat box. I don't know if Charlie will paste it one more time. You'll be seeing these slides today, but they will also help you as you prepare, and you may want to refer to them later. So just to give you a little bit of an introduction into why we are again here today, I think everyone here for the most part has seen at past ESIP meetings that our sessions have really improved in quality because of past trainings that have been provided by Charlie and her colleague Fisher. I know that as ESIP staff, our sessions have improved because of the ways that they've made us think hard about how to do small things that make a big impact and really invite our session attendees in and encourage them to contribute and to realize what they can actually take away. Today's session is different than the last couple of trainings. We didn't want to keep repeating ourselves. You guys are showing an interest in growing and learning new things, and so we don't want to be spitting the same things back at you, but we want to kind of keep pushing the envelope. So Charlie has put together an all new workshop, so I hope you're excited about that. I would encourage you today, as you have done in the past, to challenge yourselves, to think about something new you might try, and to really keep in mind or think hard about what you'd like to accomplish in your session, how what you'd like to accomplish might contribute to your broader plan, like over the next 6 months or a year as your collaborations continue to progress. And not just what you want to get out of the session, but what your participants might get from the session and what the incentives are for them to engage and to continue to engage even beyond the meeting. So Charlie's going to help us think more in these ways. And I will just say, I'm really excited again, and I will pass it to Charlie.
Thank you, Megan, for that great kickoff. I was telling Megan before the meeting, I'm put so much thought into the design. I'm not really great about kicking off my workshops, so it really helps to have a good partner with that. In designing this workshop, and Megan and I were talking about it, we were really taking into consideration what we were feeling, and we know that you're feeling, is this crunch between AGU and the holidays and just life in general, about your just finished the summer meeting, and all of a sudden now you're entering the winter meeting. There's this crunch. You have big aspirations for what you proposed. You had some awesome proposals, very well written and thought out. But then when it comes time, like all of us, to implementing your vision, time gets crunched, and we often then are in a position of putting things together and don't have a lot of time to put additional thought into it. So today's workshop is about helping you clarify what you really want to get out of your sessions with a little bit more specificity, so that you can actually design to see those outcomes. Okay, next slide. So that's kind of what we've been talking about. And so the way today is going to go is we're going to help you. We're going to have an activity where we help you think about right now in real time what specifically you want to get out of your session. We're going to look at the common design methods that we're seeing that's being used in this group of sessions for the winter meeting. So we're not going to ask you to necessarily do anything differently than you've already thought of, but we're going to be tweaking, giving you some enhancements of how to use those design activities a little bit better. And then at the end, you all have, as much as you're a session host, we're all participants in various sessions and meetings that we go to. So you already have a wide variety of experiences that you probably know of some additional tips and tricks that we can learn about. And so we're going to tap into your experience to see if we can tease out some of those and what actually made those positive experiences work. Next. Okay, so starting with what you proposed. So you're clear, all of you are super duper clear about your purpose of your session. And you already, most of you have a plan of, a vision of what you're going to do in your session, but you probably haven't had a time to think a lot about what it is. What would the outcome actually look like if you were truly delighted with how your session went? What would happen? What exactly would that look like? And so we're going to jump into that right now. I think, yeah, so now is the time to open up the slide deck that you've downloaded. And it's kind of been designed where you can just type in your responses into the slide deck. It's sort of like a little workbook for you, and that way you can use it later. What we're going to do in this activity, it'll take about 6 minutes. I'm going to give you a series of 6 prompts with a minute to respond as many times as you can within that minute to that prompt. Don't overthink it. Just write what's at the top of your mind. It doesn't even have to be complete thoughts, or just try to tap into what's there for you. You can always go back and refine it later. And then so we'll go through the 6 prompts in 6 minutes to see if we can tease out some more clarity. So next slide. So slide 4 for you guys. So in reference to your session, something that I really want to see changed, move forward, expanded, or gain more momentum around. Write your responses, what comes up for you for that. And I'm going to put my little timer on right now.
Should we be making copies of this or just typing directly into this slide?
You can't, I don't think I've got edit onto this slide. So it's your personal slide deck. So download a copy for yourself that you
I see. Okay, make a copy. Okay, great.
Yeah. Or you could just grab a piece of paper and write it too. Okay, pause that. Next slide, next prompt. So next one. What's your response to, it's important that the presenters or the panelists in my session speak to or stay focused on? Like whatever comes up for you, just capture, jot down some notes. Just saw Brandon's remark. True. Okay, pause. Next slide. In an ideal world, I see the participants offering, and I would like you to be really specific about this. A lot of you are asking for use cases or feedback. So I want, like, what feedback would be helpful? What would be the qualities, the characteristics of it? Or if, like, questions that you want to get, like, be as specific as possible around the characteristics of what you want the participants to offer you. Okay, next prompt. When it's all said and done, I want the participants to walk away with. Okay, next prompt. The messages I hope that come through clearly. And final prompt. Something else that's important to me to get, convey, or provide. Okay, pause. Next slide. Okay, you probably found that you have a wide range of responses there. Hopefully it spans the space of what you want to you're hoping to get from offering your session. So take a moment and look over everything you've written. Just flip through the slides and either mark it in some way, maybe highlight it, or just take a mental note, like which things that you wrote kind of rises to the top, seems more important to you, that you must get from it. Like, and it would be really satisfying if you were able to get these things from your session. So take just a moment to kind of look through what you've written. Okay, good. Next slide. Okay, this is this pyramid here is actually just a triangle. And it doesn't signify any hierarchy or anything. Here. So I'm making the statement like a session's design, the design you have for your session actually guides the kind of outcomes you can expect from your session. And that's because the design of your session is like guardrails or the architecture in which everything else hangs, and it shapes what's happening. You have some space to wiggle around, and sure, things can go sideways in a session, but the more you can bring your what you want the outcomes to be, you can use those to design and shape and put up these additional guardrails for your session. And since some of you already have put quite a bit of thought into this already, for example, how I'm using this triangle evaluation tool. So it's an evaluation tool that we'll use in a minute. Is, for example, if you have a session that you're going to be like, there's going to be a lot of talks, right? Like 4 or 5 lightning talks, or a panel discussion with 4 or 5 panelists on it. Well, you know already that that's going to take up the majority of time in your session. So the outcome you can expect is that you're probably looking not necessarily to make progress on something in your session in real time, but you're more looking at wanting to influence, shift, or expand thinking to introduce participants to a broader range of possibilities. You're looking at wanting to influence outside of the session. It's more of a longer timeline that you're going for, not necessarily short time frame. And one more thing about that is that, so you really don't have much control over participants come, you're sharing information, you're not controlling what's happening in the session so much as conveying the information. For sessions that are hosted by, say, collaboration clusters, and you wanted to get feedback, recommendations, use cases, then the outcomes you want to expect is that you want to make progress on something in real time in the session or shortly after the session to move something forward. That's an outcome that you're expecting to get. And then something that showed up in a lot of the proposals, both explicitly written about and implicitly implied, was this sense of wanting to attract enroll and attract additional collaborators and people to help you move something forward. Like a sense of enrollment, building community around a new tool or something like that. What we often happen in sessions like this, though, like you really do want that to happen, but we don't quite know how to do enrollment in sessions. Typically, what I see is either waiting to the last minute after we dazzle everyone with all the information that we're sharing. And then we go, and if you want to join us, reach out to me, one of us, or here's your sign-up sheet, right? And that's as far as it goes. If you really want to build community and increase collaboration, then there's this engagement factor that needs to happen in the meeting to attract more people and to give them a sense of belonging. And we're going to talk about all of these and how to enhance them a bit more later on. But I just kind of wanted to introduce you to like the way the designs you already have are already setting up a set of outcomes that you can expect if they're as on their own like that. But of course, a lot of our sessions are mixtures. So next slide. Okay, so the way this little evaluation tool works is, so looking at everything that you wrote with the 6 prompts on what do you really want to get out of your session, knowing kind of how the design is in your mind. Let's see if I can do it on my slide deck over here. Okay, so it's like you're thinking, yeah, I do have my session designed with about 5 lightning talks, but I do want to build a community aspect to it. I do want to attract collaborators. So it's not just one thing or the other, right? There's this mixture. And so, so I might take this little target, this little bullseye, and it's not going to be just here because I want to integrate some of this community building aspect too, right? But knowing, so it may not, it's like weighted, right? Like if I'm gonna, okay, I'm gonna speak clearly now. Too many thoughts entering simultaneously. So if the community aspect is really important, then you need to make more time for it in your session, right? Oh, okay, great, Megan. And then, and the same with moving something forward, right? With the community aspect. Oh, wait, come over here. There we go. So so what I want you to do is like kind of take a minute here and move the target on your own triangle, kind of get a feel for where with your expectations, where would you put that bullseye, right? And I would encourage you to really think twice about putting it in the center, because you only have at most probably 90 minutes and it's going to be difficult. Probably all of those things are not going to be weighted as equally for you either. And it would be difficult to include all of those things in a 90-minute session, right? So really looking at what you think is most important. Play around with where would you put that bullseye, right? Because then that is going to dictate in your design how much time you need to give certain activities. So I'm going to give you like a minute to do that. I do this little, I brought up I got this little triangle diagram from Dave Snowden, who works in Cognitive Edge with complexity, right? I love it. And I designed one for University of Washington's Hack Weeks that they do with the people that propose projects for the Hack Weeks, to think about how everybody on their team, like, what do they want to get out of it? Do they want to like get stuff done? Do they want to build relationships? Do they want to work alone? And it really kind of helps simplify what you want your experience to be. Yeah. Dave love his stuff. Love him. Well, I love his work. I don't know if I love him or not, but anyway. Okay, so you should have a sense now of, I hope that was fun for you. So now let's dive into what you can do in each of these kind of 3 domains to make your sessions more impactful. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to look at these three areas. Next slide. Okay, starting with, if you have a session where you've got a lot of, even if you're doing one talk and you're trying to get a lot of information in, you've got multiple talks or panel discussions, we're going to kind of take a little deep dive into this area. Next slide. Okay, so the very first tip in this category is take the participants' experience into consideration. And what that means is putting so we're working with really learning, like what are their learning needs? The reason you're putting your session together isn't just for fun. You actually want you want to influence them, shape their thinking, have them act on it in some way afterwards. And in order for them to do that, you need to take what are their learning needs into consideration. And I know all of these bullets, I know all of you know these things because you've been participants lots of time. But after 2 years of Zoom meetings, virtual meetings, just all the change that's happening around us, it's really taken a toll on people. And what I'm seeing in almost every group I work with, including myself, is it's really easy now for people to get overwhelmed with information, get disoriented, having a feeling of being disconnected from the information from while they're there. They're easily distracted. Remember, everyone's coming in a different environment when they're tuning in to your session. Some are in their homes, some are in offices, some have kids at home that are there, some are, don't actually get time off from their jobs and they're having to fit your session in. So it's really a lot of competing things requiring people's attention. And what I'm seeing is like there's this rise, even if you've never been diagnosed with ADD. I know a lot of people are feeling like they have ADD these days. They can't even remember what they did at yesterday or the beginning of the day. And so what you want to do is design your sessions and support the participants. They're going to be able to remember what they wanted to remember from your session. And I think that's all I want to say there. Next slide. So over the last 2 years, I've been part of focus groups where after meetings, we're talking to the participants to see what their experience has been like so we can improve it, right? And we hear this a lot. Actually, this is probably one of the nicest things that we've heard. It's so, I think with in scientific and academic groups, we're so passionate about our work that we just want to give you everything I know. I want to give you everything I know so that you can go forth and do whatever you're going to do with it, right? And so we think more is better. And the result is, from a participant's point of view, they feel like it's drinking from a fire hose. One participant said after a day of tutorials and a hack week that he felt utterly destroyed by the end of the day, and he just wanted to go to bed and pull the covers over his head. Even though it was awesome and he was learning so much, it's overwhelming. And when people are overwhelmed, they can't even remember what they want to remember, right? So we want to attend to this helping again with integration, sense making, and remembrance of the information. Next slide. Okay, so what does that mean? So tip 2 is like, what you're going to do to support participants is how can you reduce the cognitive load, the load that it takes them cognitively to be in your session. And remember, they're in your session, but they may have attended a bunch of sessions before yours. So it's like, how can you attend to the cognitive load? Well, one thing is for talks, we all know this and it's so hard to do, but keep them focused on 1 or 2 points only, so that it's not 10 points they're trying to remember, but only 1 or 2. This is working with a learning specialist at the University of Washington to help tutorial designers. And this is one of the things that we're really emphasizing a lot. And it is very hard to do. Even for me, it's so hard to do. The other thing is like if you've got lightning talks or a panel discussion, if you wait to the last minute, like if you've invited your lightning talk presenters, right? They know what your purpose is and kind of the theme that you want them to speak to, but they're going to come with all of their goodies and knowledge too. And now you've got 5 people trying to put in all of this information into your session. What I'm recommending is to reduce that cognitive load, because when you listen to this, your mind would be trying to fit all the dots together, like you're trying to make sense of how do all these 5 speakers fit and how does this connect to the purpose of your session. Do that work for the participants. Work with the presenters ahead of time and work together and tease out like what are the key themes that connects all your work together that you can then, each of the presenters can then simplify their presentations to speak to those key things that connect and strengthen the purpose, like why you're holding the session, what you wanted intended in the first place. You would think, oh, but that's going to take time. Can I schedule everyone to do this? But actually, I think it's going to help the presenters, the speakers, because now they can just craft their talk for 1 or 2 points, right? So it makes their job easier. It makes it easier to help you have a great session. And then finally, provide a framework for the participants to listen to. You can either do that by setting the context at the beginning, like here's some things, the purpose, and this, you're going to hear a set of speakers, and we're all going to talk about this. So when you're listening to us, all of the talks, think about these key things as you're trying to make sense of the information that you're hearing. So you can do that through speaking. You can show like a slide at the beginning with the key points. You can give them a set of questions to ponder as they're listening to. There's a whole variety of ways that you can do that, but providing some type of framework is pretty critical. And the last thing I want to say about this is, so I'm giving you some key tips in this workshop, but it's not like everything. And that's why after the workshop, ESIP is, I'm going to be available for consulting, right? So just kind of understand what you want to put in there. And like, as they say, the devil is in the details, right? So implementing it and orchestrating it is another thing. Feel free to reach out to me and I can help you craft the framework for listening, the invitations. I can help you craft parts of this. So don't worry so much about that right now. Next slide. Okay, so tip 3. I've spoken a lot about how hard it is for people to remember things and get easily overwhelmed. And this is also speaking to different learning styles, right? Tip 3, about making time for participants to incorporate the information they've just heard. Because if you don't do it in the session and you assume they're going to do it after your session, they're probably going to forget, right? Because it's so much going on, right? This also talks about, like some people prefer they need to process information that they've heard out loud with others. That's how they process, is by speaking out loud and hearing their ideas bounce off of others. And there's another group of people that they actually need time to ponder and process alone first before they can speak and share to others. So if you just use open Q&A, and for instance, or assume this is going to happen, it's probably not. You're going to reduce, like for feedback sessions in particular, if you don't give time for people to ponder in the ways that they learn things, then you're going to reduce the number and the quality of the feedback, recommendations, comments, questions that you're going to get. So by incorporating, we're talking like a minute, incorporating a little minute time for reflection, now you're amplifying the quality of what you're going to get from this. So it's like a moment of silence to reflect and capture some notes. Even better then is to go from that into small breakouts to deepen their integration and sense making. And so there's a lot going on. You may think, oh, we don't have time for that, right? There's a lot happening in small group breakout interactions that are designed for sense making around information. It's something about hearing yourself say something out loud that helps the memory remember what it is, right? And then it's like something about hearing other people talk. And it's like it's either validating my perspective or contrasting or enhancing, which again helps me to remember and make sense of the information that I'm hearing. So that's why we do small breakouts. And then just when you go to breakouts, remember that what happens in a big group situation, if you don't have a facilitator, also happens in a small group. You want to help them self-facilitate, even if it's like 4 people, 3 or 4 people, like have a Google Doc or a slide or something with like what it is they're supposed to be doing in there. What are the questions? Maybe some directions about this is how much time you're going to have, share the time with each other, make sure all voices are heard, that kind of thing. Next slide. Let's see, what am I talking? Oh, okay. So if you have another thing you can do, if you have a series of lightning talks or panel discussion, you don't want to necessarily wait for all 5 lightning talks to incorporate sense making. Maybe in between lightning talks, give them a few prompts that they can record, like what were their key takeaways for that particular talk before you go to another. Again, other ways of supporting the cognitive load for participants, because if you wait until the end, they probably have forgotten what they wanted to remember in the first one. Let's see. So there you can use generic prompts like similar or that I've given here. You can put in a little bit more effort to curate a couple of prompts from each of the presenters on what they think the participants might want to ponder about their talk. Or if you've done the work to connect the lightning talks or the panelists, the prompts can be about those key, somehow the key connecting threads. Again, if you have trouble with this, you can reach out to me and I can help you with it. Let's see. And I think I'm ready to go to the next slide. It is so easy to use what I call open Q&A. And what I mean by that is after talk saying, does anyone have any questions? So I just kind of want to make you a little bit aware of the dynamics that are happening when you do that. Typically when that happens, you get the usual suspects that are brave enough to speak in a group and not feel like they're stupid for their question might be stupid. You're going to get probably the experts, and they're going to be asking questions about what they want to know to further their knowledge along. And you might not necessarily be tapping into questions that a lot of people would want to know in order to use the information. So you're not engaging everyone when you do that. So some alternatives to that is, so in working with that learning specialist, she was saying that, you know, imposter syndrome is live and healthy in many of us. So the way that we even ask a question is important. For instance, if we say, does anyone have any questions? Then it almost feels like you could interpret that as something inside of you that didn't understand what I'm saying, right? Versus if you change it a little bit about, hey, I kind of know everyone's going, there are questions. We couldn't have possibly been clear enough. Like what question, assuming, like what questions do you have? It's just that slight shift can make all the difference in the world. Again, incorporating time for reflection before opening questions up, giving people just kind of time to think about, like, what questions do I even have in order to use the information when I leave the room? And yes, and then ideally you would do time for reflection and then breakouts. This is a way also to build community, right? Using those breakout sessions to talk about what we're hearing. Next slide. Now, let's talk a little bit more about if you've got a session that's designed around, like the collaboration clusters, where you're really looking at, I need to get feedback, but particular kind of feedback, recommendations or use cases. Like, how do you do that? Get what something closer to you really can act on that you really did want, that you want to need. So again, what we did in the beginning is, if you can be as specific about what kind of feedback would be helpful, maybe give a set of examples about the feedback like this is quite helpful, recommendations or use cases. It's the more specific you can be, then you're helping the participants to help you, because people love to help. And the more that you can tell them what kind of help is helpful, then they can give it to you. So think in this situation, think what are your conditions of satisfaction? And then figure out how to share that with the participants. A lot of you, I saw this in your proposals, that you're actually going to get the participants time to think about these kind of things ahead of your session, to tell them how they can prepare and show up at your session. And that's awesome. Be as specific as you can with that. And then instead of just jumping right to opening, like Q&A, opening up for feedback, using the small breakout groups so that they can hear each other and continue to shape their feedback to you. Next slide. And finally, that last element, like how incorporating, you're wanting to enroll others in your work. You need to incorporate some type of engagement. You need participants to be really engaged. And one reason of that is because you want, the more engaged they are with the material and with you and your group, then the more they're going to feel like, oh, I'm with my peeps. I feel like I have a sense of belonging here. I think that they would actually value what I have to contribute, right? So that's kind of the message and the environment that you're wanting to create. So take time to create that if that's what you really need. Don't leave enrollment to the very end with, it's like, hey, there's a sign-up sheet, or you can reach out if you want to join us. That is not inviting. So anything you can do in these interactions to help people feel like I'm with my peeps, that's what you want to do. And one additional thing that you can do to help this is, don't be afraid to ask for the kind of help in your collaboration cluster. Like, we don't have people that do this. We really actually would like that. Because the more you, again, the more specific then you can be, then the more someone listening to you can say, oh, hey, I can offer that. versus guessing whether or not they would fit in or not. If they know that they have a skill or experience that you're looking for, then that automatically makes them feel like they're going to be comfortable and accepted working with you. Let's see, next slide. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this, because it's probably stuff you probably already know, but just quickly tips for if you do use breakout groups, keep them small, like 3 to 4 people, 5 really max. The more people you have in a breakout group, the more time you need in breakout rooms, because you need time. Often we don't account for the time it takes to get into the room. It's kind of disorienting. We got to land, we got to introduce ourselves, and we're a little shy to speak up first. And all of that takes time. So the smaller you can keep the breakout rooms, the more intimate it feels, the more people feel safe to speak up. And let's see, so make self-facilitating in the breakout rooms easy by providing, like I often use a Google document with directions and prompts and invite them to, when someone's speaking, that the other people in the breakout rooms take notes for them. So you're kind of forming like a little impromptu community right there. And again, talking to this, conveying a sense of belonging. Next slide. Okay, so now we want to, you've heard me talk enough. I've definitely talked enough. I want to hear from you. All of you have been attending virtual meetings, and not just virtual meetings, maybe before, it's like, what experience do you have with lightning talks, panel discussions? Like, they were really awesome. Like, we got a lot out of it. The discussions were great. I walked away with a lot of information. Like, when you've been either facilitated or been in these situations or a participant, like, when have you had a good experience with lightning talks and panel discussions? When have you had a good experience with in a time of either giving or getting feedback and recommendations or use cases? When have you had good experiences where you were in sessions and participants just naturally wanted to sign up to help with that work? Like, what facilitated those good experiences? What were the organizers, the session hosts, the facilitators in the room like? Were there structures? Were there processes? Like, what was there a particular invitation? What were the conditions that made those experiences good and really work? So we want to tease out what the tips are that you know about, but maybe don't know that you know. So take a moment and think back on your good experiences and just jot down some notes for yourself about what made them work well. What did they do? What tips can we draw out of those good experiences? And then in a little bit, we're going to go into breakout rooms to talk about these a little bit more. And hopefully we will hear some more information that we can then use you can use in your sessions. So let's give everybody a minute to do that. Okay, pause. Okay, in my rambling, I forgot to ask. What questions do you have about all of the information before we go to breakout rooms? What questions do you have about what I presented so far? Is there anything that is I can make more clear for you? And Megan, did you? Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, go ahead, jump in.
One thought that occurred to me is that there may be differences in approach between live sessions with people in the room versus virtual sessions. And maybe at some point you could actually highlight, it's like, how can we apply the tips that you're giving us? How does that apply back to live sessions? And what are the differences?
Absolutely. Everything, I think the way that I worked with the groups worked particularly well because I was doing all that in person before, right? And they translated so easily and well to the virtual world. So anything we're doing, I'm recommending that you do virtually. I've actually done in person. And I will be glad when the time comes and we do hybrid or in person to talk more about that and show you how that's done. Anyone else?
This is Karen. I'll just say that I found the triangle with those three perspectives and where I want my particular event to be very helpful. And I'm hoping to explore that a little bit more, to understand how best to spend my 90 minutes.
Yeah, awesome. And you can share these with your co-host also and see what they think, right? That's another added dimension. Megan, did you have any punctuations to add?
I would just emphasize that, Charlie, you're hitting on some of the biggest questions I've seen collaboration areas ask as they're developing their session plans, this concept of sense making and really like making ways for other voices to speak up. I think that's really important. That's been something that's been very important to me. And I think that like starting a session off on the right foot, making people feel welcome at the start can have such an impact on what they might contribute even, 85 minutes into the session. So I appreciate your thinking about these things.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I have a question about the breakouts. Is it usually good to have like a moderator or facilitator? And how do you take into account the personalities in your breakout? Because they're, you might provide a structure for it to be successful, but then you got some personalities in there that maybe there's not good chemistry or they just want to take it in a different direction. That always happens. So do you have any recommendations for that?
Oh yeah, that is such a, yes, big, rich question. So I've done both, right? I've helped session hosts do both. It depends on, there was one like in the summer meeting year before last where Leslie Wyborn had 5 different breakout rooms, and each breakout room she was working on something different. So each breakout room was working on things simultaneously, and she was able to have an expert, a subject matter expert, facilitating each breakout room, right? But even with that, it's really hard to, if the breakouts are larger, you're going to always get the situation where the usual suspects speak and dominate, and that is the way the conversation is going to go. So training facilitators that might be in breakout rooms, just to have them be aware of this, to help, to even speak to participants before they go into breakout rooms, like, hey, we're going into breakout rooms, and we've all been part of meetings where one person talks, is not aware of how much time they're taking. And so we want to just be aware, make sure everyone listens to each other. In the breakout rooms that I design for, I actually have in the rooms document like directions saying, you've got 15 minutes for this question. There's going to be 4 of you. That means X minutes a person. So you're making, you're like giving support structures for them to be able to honor each other's voices, because they're now have the information they need to hold each other responsible for having everyone's voice heard. So I would be glad to talk to you more one-on-one about it. But really, it's like, it kind of depends. If you're going into breakout rooms and it's more generic, high-level conversation, just having like a group prompts or questions that you want them to respond to, telling them how much time they have to respond to each one. And if it's really something more specific, I definitely would have a subject matter expert to go into the breakout rooms to help with the conversation and to guide it, because they're going to be in there and able to tease out the important things that need to be pulled out. Did that answer your question a little bit? Got it.
Jonathan, I would just add,
Yeah,
you know,
that's great. Thanks.
you can always give them a way, you know, make sure they don't feel stuck in that room. If they find something they don't, you know, they're always welcome to come back to the main room. They're not stuck with the group of people that you've put them with. I also personally believe that, well, what Charlie said before, having a place for people to record their thoughts and that prompt, that's really helpful, because everybody forgets when you send them into a breakout room what they were supposed to do. But also, like, don't over engineer it would be my point of view here. Like, there's some serendipity that comes from these meetings that like you just could never have foreseen. So don't make the task so hard that it feels daunting. And also, as you're introducing your breakouts, that's when everybody disappears, because they think it's going to be harder. They're scared to go into breakouts. So as I think getting that like initial, we are going to have breakouts and here's what you're going to do, be as encouraging as possible is really key, because I see that's really where people drop off or get scared the most.
Yeah, and I think people drop off if they feel like I just wanted to kind of, I don't know anything about this area and I just kind of wanted to learn about it. I don't have anything to contribute. So, and I'm going to feel imposter syndrome when I go in the breakout rooms with all of it, right? So the more that you can speak to that it's okay to just be an observer. You don't have to contribute. If you are really curious, we invite that curiosity. So yeah, there's all kind of ways to handle that. Just kind of think about what you want the experience to be and what you need to get out of it, and then design the breakout rooms accordingly. And like I said, there's hundreds of ways to do this, and I'll be glad to help with that.
Yeah, and Kelsey, I hear what you're saying. You did something kind of miraculous with your session. I was so impressed by what you did, and it's not to say that a hard set of breakouts and a hard session can't succeed. It's just to say that if that's what you're endeavoring to do, you have to put that much more thought and effort into making those things clear and encouraging folks along the way.
And I would say, so that's going to be an example of like when it worked, right? Some of these things that I want you to like, why did that work? I would say, Kelsey, part of that is probably who you were being when you sent them off, when you gave them their mission in the breakout rooms, right? It's like, what was it that made that work well? So maybe kind of tease that out in the breakouts so that we can learn from you and share it with everyone else. Bill?
Yeah, just a comment. The way you went through the sequence of the session, it kind of reminded me of that thing with just a single presentation. You tell them what you're going to tell them, and you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So it seems like a session could also be thought about in that way. That framework for discussion at the beginning will be equivalent to telling them what you will be telling them. So, just for myself, I find that I'm going to think more about it. I find it useful to think about it that way.
That gets to that framework, right? Framework for listening.
At the beginning, but then you go through the actual meat of the session, and then at the end, you have to wrap up with kind of what everybody heard, or what you want to get at what everybody has heard and gotten out of the session to make sure that it's what you had planned it to be.
Yeah, I would. Well, everybody is going to hear and get whatever they get from it. We can't really say that, but you can say this is what we're hoping. This is what we really wanted to emphasize, and yes, tease out those key points again. Yeah.
And along the way, how can we kind of guide them so that they don't veer too far off what the intent of this, the goal of the session is?
Who are you speaking of? You're talking about participants or speakers?
The participants.
Give me an example. Like,
well, you were just saying that everybody's going to take out of the session from their perspective, but are there things that we can do or put into the session as it proceeds so that we can, give them some kind of a guide on both sides so that they don't veer too far off what we want the session to be about, or what we want them to get out of the session?
Yeah, I want to, I don't know if this is, I'm tuning in exactly on what you're saying, but makes me kind of think about, the structure and your design and the way you put prompts and the activities that you do is going to be the framework. It's going to guide the outcomes, right? But you don't want to get it too constrained, right? Because you want people to be able to take the information and make it their own. And that needs to be relevant to their world and the way they see things and how it will fit in, because there's not going to be a plug and play world, right? Where it's an exact fit. So they're going to be taking bits and pieces and using it and thinking about it in their mind about how does this fit with what I already know or what I'm doing? How does this fit with what somebody else that I can give to somebody else? So you don't want to get it too constrained. It's like you want it enough structure to keep things focused and make it easy for people to integrate, not too many things, but a few, but enough spaciousness that they can find their own relevance within the information, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. So just thinking along the way, whether like a poll or such interactive things can help for the group to see where everybody is at.
Absolutely. That Slido poll is a great tool.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So let's take let's see, Megan. Yeah, I think we've got time to put people in breakouts for about 15 minutes, you think?
Yeah, I already have the rooms set up.
Excellent. So what we're looking for is sharing those success stories, like, and what made it work, because when we come out, we want to hear some more tips that we can try, that we'll test out. So let's make it so.
All right. And if you need anything, please come back to the main room.
Welcome back, everyone. We've got just a few minutes left, and I want to know, let's share, like, did anybody here, let's go by like categories, like for lightning talks and panel discussions, did anyone have any additional tips that they heard in their breakout sessions that could help us have more effective lightning talks and panel discussions? Did you hear anything about those things?
This is Gary. I made one comment on panels. The best panel I participated in as an audience member was that the panelists knew what each other was going to say. The organizer had told them he didn't want to canned talk. He said you have to, it has to be related. So the panelists could actually make points and then talk to each other. So it actually went somewhere as opposed to being like one silo after another.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that reminds me of when I've done panel discussions, we do like a fishbowl where they're talking, we give them some kickoff questions and then say, explore this over the next 15 minutes together. And so you're actually, participants are listening in on a real-time conversation that's emerging. And it's very interesting, but you've got to be a great facilitator in order to get that to work quite, not a great one, but you've got to do some facilitating to get that to work nicely. What else did you, what else did you hear about panel? Any other tips about panel discussions or lightning talks? Yeah, Jonathan?
Yeah, we had some good conversation around the lightning talks in terms of positive experiences were from when we told the panelists ahead of time, kind of like what Gary said, this is what we're interested in hearing from you. So it stays relevant to the session and keeps people from going all over the place.
Yeah, totally. Let's see, we've got just a little time left. So let's explore some of the other, unless someone's got a burning like, yeah, you got to do this. Let's move on to getting feedback. Recommendations or use cases. How do you do that successfully? Did you hear anything? Oh, come on.
I think one of my experience is that getting really specific instruction of what the feedback they want to hear. So they've put us into breakout rooms of asking them to just provide feedback for the specific paragraph of this document. And so that keeps us from jumping around from one place to another. Yeah.
Yeah. And Douglas, I know that like you've done this before, getting use cases and feedback on the sessions before. So you've been around this block a few times. You've probably honed your skills at getting the feedback that you want.
And just in general, seems like if the feedback requested is open, like here's a diagram, as the speaker presents, please add your comments to it. I found that typically you don't get a lot inputs, but if it's specific with either multiple choice or something that they can do easily without actually writing things down, you tend to get more responses. But of course, it limits what they can respond with if you're providing them the selection of answers. Mm-hmm. There's kind of a trade-off there.
Right. You want, and with the facilitation, someone that I learned from, Keith McCandless, he has this thing, he says, precisely ambiguous. Like you want your invitations to be precise enough, but allow for some ambiguity to show up too. It's not so constrained because people look at things in oblique ways, and sometimes that's very helpful, right? Yeah. So it's a little bit of a talent to crafting these things, but just being aware of it is great. And then really quickly, what about attracting enrollment, like getting people to join in on collaborators? Did you hear anything about like what makes people want to join? Any success stories?
This wasn't in the breakout, but I will say we were really excited to have Sky come and join us for a while after the summer session. And I think it was because we had a really long breakout with a pretty open-ended ask, like a very specific ask, but an open-ended solutions type. And he started writing code. And so he wanted to keep doing it. finish it. And so just having a thing that wasn't quite done, but that someone had put work into was a really good way of getting that started.
That is awesome. I've seen, like, I keep coming back to, people love to help. So anytime you can make an invitation, we need help, then it's very attracting. I noticed, I think in ESIP did it with some panel. I guess you had a panel discussion. I don't know if it was last summer, where the panelist actually asked, this is what I need help with, and people could contribute. I thought that was brilliant. Okay, so we've got no minutes left, but we just want to put in a plug for coaching. I guess is the next thing we want to talk about, Megan, right?
Yeah.
My ability to consult with you guys.
That's right. So I hope you've enjoyed this workshop with Charlie. I learned a lot of things. I hope you did too. But Charlie's not going to just poof go away. We will have her assistance in a couple of formats. I believe Charlie will offer some consultations and possibly a couple of office hours. And there will be a chance for you to sign up for these things. I will make sure that you have all the information you need by Friday, the recording of this, the resources, and how to sign up for those opportunities. Charlie, did you want to say anything more on that?
The only thing more is that, so I'm gonna, you can just sign up in what Megan sent you. I'll have a Calendly, and you can sign up on my calendar. I'm trying to make as much space and time for time zones as possible. And don't think it's like you, it could be 15-minute question, right? It could be a 30-minute question. It could be a 45-minute design session. It's like, don't think, oh, well, my question's not big enough, I'm not going to call Charlie. It's like, no, any one of these things I'm more than happy to work with. And whether it's 15 or 45 minutes, don't hesitate to reach out. And I think that's it. And if you have any questions, you can also email me. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charlie. And thank you everyone for being here. This was really wonderful.
Thanks, Charlie. Bye.